Robyn, hello.
Tobias, hello.
This feels weird.
It does.
So I'm going to be talking to you today about directing and
Mhm.
asking you some questions. So I guess first off, how was your first experience directing a project? Because obviously this is the first time you've
My
directed on something like
directorial
this.
debut. Oh, it
Yeah.
was great fun. It was really, really fun. I mean, it's helped by the fact that obviously I've known you and I knew Amber, I knew Ross, and that was um that was really nice. I was also staying with Bobby, who ended up in it as well, but Bobby is a very dear friend of mine, and Emma, and I was staying with them. So I was being very well looked after by everyone around me if I had any sort of wobbles. But mostly I realised that actually I've been directing for about 15 years. I just call it teaching. So there's very little difference. There are differences, and we can talk about that later if you like. But it was remarkably affirming because I went, oh no, I do know how to do this.
How did you approach the text in terms of like preparing to direct it? Like, did it differ to
Mm.
how you'd approach it initially from an acting perspective, or was there crossover, or like, how was that?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I had a call with our writer, the lovely Booby, and I called
Mm,
them. And I chatted through what their ideas were. Because, in many ways, as a director in this, because it wasn't my piece, my job is to translate everyone else's ideas into one coherent narrative. So, my job as a director feels less of a dictator and more of sort of a negotiator and making sure all these different things will work together. And I like to be very actor focused and very actor led. So it would depend a bit on what you brought to it. My main
mm,
things were quite broad. It was things like making sure we had a clear distinction between the shepherd's internal and external voice. I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose pace as well, because while this has some beautiful moments of stillness and it reflects that landscape, if it was all that, then this would have become a sleep podcast. And while you probably can fall
mm.
asleep listening to it, I don't want people to. I want to make sure we have that sense of actually growing threat. And in order to do any kind of threat or suspense work, you have to have rapid changes of tempo, or what give you that.
Mm.
So approaching text was far more about, I mean, as you know, I bang on about antithesis, but it's all the normal stuff you'd look at as an actor as well. So process wasn't that different. I sort of went through obviously
Mm.
working out any words I didn't know, working out kind of any particularly strong beats that I thought we should go through, looking at the writing, at the language, at kind of that assonance and the consonants and how all of this would sound. But overall, I sound like I did a lot of work. I actually didn't. I'm not overly. Well, no, I didn't. I just turned up, didn't I? No, no, I did. I did a bit of stuff, but I really wanted to see what you and the other actors would bring to it. I was then going to
Mm.
work with you on that because I feel like had I have done loads and loads before, and then you showed up and did something else, I didn't want to puppeteer you.
It felt very collaborative,
Mm.
collaborative in the whole process. Do you find that? Do you think that's a really important thing when it comes to directing in general? Do you think it should be a collaborative process rather than a direct? You
I
know,
think it
you
depends
should
on
do
the
this. You should do
project.
this. Mm.
I think it depends on the project because we had enough time that we could go
Mm.
through it collaboratively, and I could let you follow your instincts, and I could do all of this. And I was far more of a guiding hand than a kind of a picking you up and putting you places. What I found in
Mm.
directing in the past, especially if I don't have much time or I'm working with less experienced actors, I occasionally do have to say, go there, say this, do this, and it
Mm.
becomes a little bit more prescriptive. Only, like I say, because I don't always have time to get people there. And kind of, I'll bring it up now because I was sort of having a little think about it. That difference between teaching and directing is you, a director is focused on the product. I need to get the product that you guys need. Whereas a
Mm.
teacher is more focused on the process of getting you to the end product. And the end product, while it is still important, isn't quite as high up. And then there's also pastoral. So I will always wear that pastoral hat. What matters to me really is your emotional well-being, physical well-being, all of that stuff. And I think generally collaboration is a better way of approaching because actors tend to get more out of it, although some just prefer to be told.
Mm.
That's another conversation for another day. But no, I think when it then came to working collaboratively, if I have somebody who is willing to play and collaborate, that's really exciting to me because I
Mm.
don't assume my ideas are the best ones. Like I said, unless a decision has to be made, in which case sometimes collaboration means too many cooks. And
Yeah.
sometimes as a director, I find that my most important job is going, no, we're doing this, and making a decision. It won't be the perfect decision, but it will be a lot faster and smoother if we just go, nope, this is what we're going with. And that's where that collaboration kind of has to put a pause on in order for it to go smoothly. So,
Mm.
like I say, the reason I bring up the teacher director dichotomy, or thing here, is that when I was working with some of the newer actors that we had on it, it became a process of really helping to guide them to what we needed as a result. And I was so lucky that I had enough time with them that sometimes, like I say, sometimes with you, I can just be like, we just need to hit this word and let's keep it going because we know each other. I
Yeah.
know that you have had a long experience of working in voice work. Whereas with newer actors, I have to spend more time in a more supportive role because they haven't quite got used to their own instincts yet. And that's where collaboration could actually put an undue burden on them. If I'm like, oh, what do you
Mm.
want to do? And they're going, I don't know, I can barely even speak. And I'm here going, okay, fine. Then let's go with my process, but let's make sure you still have a voice in that. Because I generally find
Mm.
everyone has some form of instinct.
Do you find, or did you find in the process of directing this, that it was really helpful to have people that you had worked with before? Because I suppose it becomes, did it feel like there was a shorthand in a sort of sense, or you felt more comfortable to be
Yeah.
able to try different things because it was people you collaborated with before? Or
Although I
yeah.
will say, for the record, that when we were casting this, we didn't deliberately go out of our way to cast people we know. Actually, the opposite. We very much wanted to not cast from a tin can, pull. We wanted to go, okay,
Mm.
new people, new people, new people. And there are some wonderful new people in this.
Mm.
It was just that when we heard your audition, we went, fuck, it's Tobias, isn't it? I don't know if I can swear on social media, but we did go, you just had it. And it
Mm.
was, there were some other wonderful people who did a great job for Shepherd, but I had to kind of consider from a directorial point of view as well. The Shepherd has a really difficult job with lots of monologues. You had to work hard. So I
Mm.
needed somebody who could deliver the goods, who I wouldn't have to coach through things, who would collaborate, and who I knew could do it. I needed to
Mm.
trust you. And I needed someone with training or lots of experience in the industry because it's really, I'm not sure, I'm sure your interview would have talked about the challenges you had of playing the Shepherd, but I'd argue it was a challenging role.
Mm.
And the casting needed to be right. And obviously if I'd met a different actor who'd gone, in fact, lots of the actors we ended up casting, including our scientists and things, were all, they were newer actors, and it was great. We worked with them, I listened, and then I for the callbacks that we did, for anyone who doesn't know, do an audition and then we do callbacks, and I was there on the callbacks and I did redirection. And that is so important. If I don't know
Mm.
you, if I do know you, if you know the director and they know how you work, it's still important to get it right. Please do take direction. But if you don't know them, don't make the mistake in an audition of thinking, oh, the most important bit is me doing it, and then the redirection is just that bit at the end. No, no,
Mm.
because essentially, if you've got to call back, we know you can do it. Like, we know that you're good enough. It's about how you work with the director. And if
Yeah.
they weren't able to shift and change in the way that I needed them to, it wasn't going to happen.
Mm.
Yeah. Behind the veil.
Well, that kind of links on to another question that I wanted to ask, which obviously the Shepherd is a really difficult character to work through, and there are so many different elements to it. And to begin with, I remember struggling slightly with the differentiation between inside and outside thought process, and also the rhythm of it. And there was a technique you used of interjecting between the lines and making me address the lines to you. Can you talk a little bit about that and where the idea for that came from?
Yeah, 100%. So the thing that I'd say, not to toot my own horn here, because I hate doing that, but one of
Toot
the
away.
things, toot away, something that I pride myself in is sort of adaptability and flexibility. Like I say, I work with the actor in front of me. I'm not great at having great big ideas for shows, but if you give me an actor and you tell me what you want, I tend to be able to get it out of them, because partly just because I've done this a very long time. And while everyone is unique, there are certain issues that I hear that I know how to diagnose and I have ideas for fixing. What I was struggling with the Shepherd is something that you often see in monologues, which is people, it sounds pre-rehearsed. And so people aren't having these new thoughts, and it doesn't also sound like it's directed at anywhere. Is it a soliloquy or is it a monologue? And at this particular one, it's a soliloquy. So you're addressing it to the audience, which means that there has to be an actual, when we talk to someone, we're not just talking at them. It's still a conversation, even if the other person isn't talking. So what I gave you, I was like, imagine you're talking to your younger self, or, you know, to your son or a child, which is why I had you face me. Clearly, I don't know, like, hello, would you like to face a child and tell me this? But it gave you something to play off. Otherwise, you're just playing off nothing. And that's really hard for an actor. Like, we exist, and even when you're acting to an audience, you're getting something back, that nebulous something. And if you hear something, you respond and you adapt. And that live adaptation and change, that is that live theatre. I'm a big believer as a director in that. I'm sorry, it's Peter Brook. It's that classic empty space thing of whether theatre is alive or theatre's dead. Long story short, you can generally tell, is theatre... is it bad? And are people actually talking to each other, or is it just a bunch of actors saying things, you know, or is it recited? And the problem with the big monologue, especially for The Shepherd, was that even the best actor in the world, and you are certainly a very, very good actor, will start to fall into the same rhythms and patterns. And again, something I think both of us do is we roughly have an idea of how things should be said. And our initial instinct is good. Your instinct is good. And I know as well, I'll read things and I'll be like, yeah, and it'll do. But we didn't just want it'll do, we wanted, you know, the best it could be, which is why your initial reads were fine. And if I was having to do things quickly, I probably wouldn't have even asked for that much difference. But I knew there was more in you. And that's why I was like, okay, let's bring him into this moment here. Let's have you deliver it to someone to get their responses, so you can start doing things like actioning, like actually try to get a response from the person in front of you. And then when you do, you can respond to it, because that will make you change. And that keeps your thoughts fresh. And there were some things that you were saying as the shepherd. Again, we just answer things differently. It's ask the questions and answer the questions. So if you had a bit where you had essentially a new thought, we had to work out what spurred that new thought. Was it an external thing? Was it someone asking this question? And then how would that new thought land? It lands vocally. We can hear it. We are so good as humans about picking up on these little nuances, even the difference between someone going, it was a nice day that day, and then it was a nice day that day. Like that sudden realization, and it keeps it fresher and it brings it into the now. It doesn't always work, but it is a really good tip I'd give for a lot of, especially like drama school people auditioning. That Shakespeare monologue has been done a million times before, but we need it to be the first time this character does it. And we needed the shepherd. This is the first time he's sharing his most intimate thoughts, which is why, so from a vocal perspective, we did it there. And for an acting perspective, we did it like that. Does that answer? Again, I'm sorry. I'm so rambly.
No, it's good. It's good. It's answers, and they are good answers. I suppose another question would be, obviously, working within the wonderful Tin Can Audio, it's the rare thing sometimes of being able to have multiple actors within the space, because, as you know, so often this job is remote, or you are just you and a director on the other side of the glass.
Yes.
You know, you don't really get to bounce off of anyone. How did you find... Obviously, you had the experience of when we were doing Camland together that bounced off as actors in the space. How did you find being able to direct multiple actors in a space, and how did that sort of change the way you work?
I've made the horrific admission before, which is sometimes with vocal work, I actually prefer not to have other people, because then I can just do a line and I can take it a few different times and I can just right away, I can be like, no, I need my moment. And I like it. I'll do it wild, darling. I'll just do it. Because the thing is, sometimes when all you've got is audio, it has to land a certain way. You have to stress a certain word. You have to do something like that. So to some degree, there were moments where I'm like, actually, I just want to get this wild from you. We don't need that connection. We're going to get it in different ways. Like, I just prioritize that. But actually having the actors in the space did create very, I'm going to say, interesting silence, I think, if that makes sense. And I hope Amber understands. Amber, who's actually listening in, and we love you, Amber. But it charges the space in a different way, and it makes the thing that I said previously about giving you someone to respond to, it keeps it alive. And that's why, you know, when you're doing screen acting, it's so helpful, even if it's a close-up on you, to have the other actor giving you the line as they would give it, because it is that reaction, and it is that audible reaction as well. And when an actor throws you something, you know, acting is this tennis match of someone's constantly throwing you the ball. That's why you spend so much time throwing balls around, by the way, if you do that in drama school. if they've never explained it to you, this is why. It's a metaphor. It's all a metaphor. But it's like throwing the ball, catch the ball, throw the ball. That's what it needs to be. And the moment that ball drops, the energy drops. I'm actually ironically a very physical actor, and I'm quite a physical director. I like working with actors. I find sort of that outside in thing, partly to be trauma informed, because sometimes getting people to, visualize their dead canary won't help if they have to do that a lot. So I like to be quite physical. So actually having people in the space for that is really helpful, because I can, if I need someone to have tension in their voice, I can grab their arm, or so. I do like a quick trick or hack that I have access to their physical form, not in a weird way, but it allows me to direct. It gives me more tools to direct with, directing in person. And then I'm about to interview our lovely intimacy coordinator, and that gave us something very different as well. Having actors in the space. I mean, I know I shouldn't be interviewing you, but how did you feel with that? Was that helpful?
Having actors to bounce off of?
Yeah,
massively. I think it depends. I think in games sometimes, because it's a lot snappier and a lot quicker in the way you have to deliver lines, sometimes it's not helpful having someone else in the space. But I think for more narrative driven things like audio drama and podcasts, like it feels you can sit in it, but not in a thing of like indulging, but in a thing of being able to actually have the emotion more, because you can reciprocate it with the other performer.
Without going into Camlan references, although this is the bonus, you've got the poster. We'll talk about it. There was that wonderful bit with, there's a Perry and Dice scene that I remember doing with you, where we could just lock eyes and we were right there, and that was so helpful. And I think having those moments with you and the scientist, that was similar. For those really intimate moments, it really helps. For the moments where you're running around in a field or whatever, or being chased by a giant monster, sometimes hit and miss.
It's different.
A little bit different. But as a director, it gives me more tools. And as an actor, I think it gives you more alive and interesting choices and dialogue to bounce off of, in, like I say, those interesting silences, because it's not really silent. You can feel it. You can feel it's like living silence. When I'm sure we could diagnose it, and I'm sure Amber could break it down. But the room tone changes. Even with the way people are breathing, the way they're moving, the way that kind of the humidity in the room changes, and you react to it. Your heart's beating faster. All these little things that do actually create noise, and you get that with two people or three or however many we managed to fit in for that bloody fireside scene. You do get a change, and that's been nice.
I think final question I want to ask you. Obviously, first time directing. What's your dream thing to direct? Because I feel like we get asked that a lot as actors, where it's like, what's your dream role, or what's your dream...
It's interesting that part of the reason, in some ways, I think I do a better job sometimes of directing than acting, is because it's not really part of my identity the same way being an actor is. Like, being an actor is part of my identity, being a director isn't. So when people criticize it, I'm like, yeah, well, it's not. It's not part of my identity. It's just something I do rather than something I am. And that means that I've not sat and really, from a young age, thought, oh, I'd love to direct this, or I'd love to do that. If I had an exciting project, I'd love to work on it. If it had exciting people, I'd love to work on it. Like I say, I don't have in my head I did a production of The Tempest again with these young people, and part the way through we had Prospero, because I have to double cast. Prospero, whenever he was Duke of Milan, was male, but on the island was female, and there was a wonderful trans story in that. So I'd love to direct, and as somebody who is more trauma informed and from the queer community, I'd love to direct work in that area, because I hope that I'd be able to give it an authentic voice. But honestly, I'm a bit more of a crafts person than I am a creative. Like, I'm creative, but it's still craft. So it's more about the right project and the right people. Like, if you called me up and was like, I've got an idea, do you want to come direct? Yeah, let's have fun. Let's do that. Let's make that happen. And something that's really rewarding for me is, like I said, working with these newer actors. We had a couple of people on this who hadn't really done much like this before. And we really did take them from being quite uncertain to the performances that you hear in the final edit. And it was so rewarding for me seeing them, because at the end of the day, like I say, I'm a teacher, and it's so lovely for me to see these people really blossom and to see the work that was within them and helping them find it. So yeah, I don't really have a dream, but if someone messaged me and something, the right role came up, I'm not actively pursuing directorial work. Is the thing. It's more sometimes people know I do it and they ask me to, or because so much of my drive of what I'm creating is based on what my actors need. And they're going, I plan a teaching year a year in advance because I go, okay, if I want them to get to Shakespeare by then, I need to teach them verse now. So we did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory like last year, so that this year they could do that. So they got used to iambic pentameter. Like, it's so
Right.
much. Yeah. Oh, if anyone ever needs to know, Oompa Loompas speak in perfect iambic. Iambic
I
pentameter.
didn't know that.
They do. Well, but that's why. So I am driven by a need to get people to create awesome work with awesome people. And if I do continue to direct, which I'd like to, I think perhaps I'm one of those people who would quite like assistant directing as well. If a director has a really lovely, big, clear vision, and I'm just there to go, you got a problem, boss? I will fix your problem. I don't need to think about all these incredible, how are we going to get this done? That's for other people. I'm just going to work with my actors to create great art without sounding too wanky, but create connection and something real in a world where, dear God, we need it.
Robyn, it was so nice getting to talk to you.
And you, a pleasure. It's always fun doing these.